Hi, Anamika. So,
Yes, hello.
yeah. So, my name is Dorothy. I don't think you joined the previous class. So, I will be taking your thermodynamics classes. So, I will just briefly, for the sake of continuity, I will briefly go through what I taught last time. So the last time we discussed why we studied thermodynamics, and we gave a brief description about the subject. So we said that it is the science of flow of heat. In here, we study the dynamics of heat flow. We also said that it describes macroscopic properties of equilibrium systems. What it means that thermodynamics does not care about atoms or molecules or any such microscopic quantities. They take a bird's eye view this system and say that, okay, this system has a particular temperature, this system has a particular pressure. It doesn't calculate the velocities and other microscopic properties of the systems. uh, uh, Equilibrium system means, uh, if we take a system and its properties, its macroscopic properties, suppose the temperature or the pressure doesn't change considerably with time, then it is an equilibrium system. And we also said that the laws of thermodynamics are entirely empirical in this foundation. What it means that people have done experiment through the ages and accumulated all this knowledge. And then they synthesize all this knowledge and then they give a mathematical foundation to it. So these are purely experimental and phenomenological based. And doing this, we got the laws of thermodynamics. The I give a brief description of the laws of thermodynamics and what the four laws does. So the first law is the zeroth law, and it describes temperature. It also gives a mathematical numerical value to it. So in zeroth law, we'll study about temperature. Then comes the first law, and the first law describes energy and says that work and heat are all forms of energy, and we can transfer one form of heat to another. Then we describe the second law, and second law describes entropy, and it gives us a sense of direction of time. Then we have the third law, which gives a numerical value to entropy. And I would like to mention here that all these laws are universally valid. It it's not like these laws are valid in one particular region of the universe. These laws are all valid everywhere. Then we learn what are the things we need to describe so that we can study a thermodynamic system. The first thing is called a system. The system is any part of the universe we are considering, that we are studying. It's called a system. And then the surrounding is the part of the universe that is left behind is the surrounding. And that then we have something called the boundary. It is a surface which divides the system from the surrounding. In system, we had three types of system. One is open system, then we had something called closed system, and then we had a isolated system. In open system, both energy and mass can be transferred from the system to the surrounding. In the closed system, only the energy can be transferred and mass cannot be transferred. And in an isolated system, we can transfer both energy and mass through the system. An example of open system will be the human body. An example of closed system will be a glass of water with ice on it, and there is a lid on the top of the glass. And an isolated system example will be thermos that we use to, keep hot water or anything hot on it. So we describe system and the different types of system.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah,
Ma'am,
yeah.
kindly, please can you repeat the systems?
Okay. Just a second. So I describe a system is the part of this universe that you are considering. Suppose your system can be suppose your system can be a glass of water. A system can be your human body. A system can be a part of the any part of the universe you are considering. Is the definition clear?
Yes, ma'am. The
Yeah.
types.
Yeah, types of, okay. So we have three types of system. One is open system, the other is closed system, and then we have something called the isolated system. Now we said that in the while studying thermodynamics, we have something called the system and the surrounding. A system will have some energy and some mass. So in an open system, both the energy and the mass can flow from the system to the surrounding. Both of these can flow from the system to the surrounding. Whereas in a closed system, energy can flow from the system to the surrounding, but mass cannot flow. And in isolated system, neither can the energy flow nor mass can flow from the system to the surrounding. An example of this will be the human body. A closed system example would be glass of water with ice on it, and you put a lid, a cover on the glass. An isolated system example will be thermos that you keep to that you use to keep I mean hot water or fluid or anything of that sort. Is the definition clear now?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Then we describe to describe the system, we use different types of variables. The first kind of variables we considered were the state variables. The first kind is the state variables, then we considered path variables. Now the state variables are anything that does not depend upon time, does not depend upon the path taken. Example will be temperature, pressure, number of moles, etc. State variable are those variables that depend upon the path taken.
Ma'am,
Yeah,
which variable depend on path?
the path variables.
Oh, okay, ma'am.
Yeah, and the state variables are those variables which we will use to describe the system. Suppose if someone asks you, what I mean, describe the system to me, you will describe it in terms of temperature or pressure or number of moles or volume. Only these state variables can be used to describe the system. And these variables do not change in space or time. Suppose you measure the temperature of a system and you keep it contained. That is, you do not allow external force to act on it. Then the temperature of the system will remain the same. These are the state variables, and only these variables can be used to describe the system. The path variables are those variables. They depend upon the path taken to reach those variables. Example are work. I will describe more of this in the upcoming session. Example of work or heat. Suppose someone tells you to describe the system, you do not describe the system in terms of work or heat. Okay, only these variables can be used to describe the system.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Then we describe something called extensive and intensive variables. Extensive and intensive. Now, extensive variables are those variables that scale with the system of the size of the system. Example of number of molecules, energy, etc. And intensive variables are those variables that do not care about the system size. Example will be temperature, pressure. A good way of understanding this is that if we take two systems, two identical systems, and we join them to form a bigger system, then all the extensive variables will double in size. That is, n will become twice n, e will become twice c, but the intensive variables will remain the same. If the initial temperature of this was T and the initial temperature of this was T, the final temperature will also be T. Same with the case of pressure. Is it clear in extensive and intensive variables?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then we describe homogeneous and heterogeneous variables. A homogeneous is which has only one component, and a heterogeneous which has more than one component, that is multiple phases. Sorry, a homogeneous is that system that has only one phase. What it means is that suppose we can take the example of tea. A tea contains whatever you like in your tea: milk, sugar, water, tea leaves, etc. But all these are mixed together to form one homogeneous phase. That is, all these are in the fluid system. So this is a homogeneous system. Whereas a glass of water with ice on it, it is a heterogeneous system. What it means is that water is in its fluid phase and ice is in its solid phase. Though it may look like this will be the homogeneous system, but in reality, this will be a heterogeneous system. So these are all the things that you studied in the last class. So in today's class, having known this,
Excuse me, ma'am.
yeah.
Ma'am, can you repeat the last two? Means why it is called homogeneous or heterogeneous?
Okay. See, homogeneous is something we have different types of phases, like solid phases, liquid phases, gas phases, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah. So in homogeneous system, what happens is that I already told that thermodynamics does not care about the microscopic details. There may be different ingredients of the system, but thermodynamics does not care about it. Thermodynamics looks at a particular system. It looks at its macroscopic properties. Suppose you take an example of, I gave the example of tea. For when someone studies thermodynamics, for them, this tea will look like it is in the fluid phase. So this will be a homogeneous system. Okay. There are many ingredients mixed with it, but all these are mixed together in such a way that they are all in this one phase. That is a homogeneous system. Is homogeneous system clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So heterogeneous is something like a glass of water with ice on it. So we know that water is in its fluid phase and ice is a solid. So I mean, the underlying component in both this is water, but the two phases are mixed together. This is an example of a heterogeneous system. Is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So these were all the discussions of the last class. Since you could not attend it, so I just thought of giving a brief revision. Now we'll go into today's discussion. Yeah. So the first topic is thermal equilibrium. So we all intuitively know what thermal equilibrium is. Suppose suppose you touch a hot pen or a hot or anything hot, or suppose you touch a cold object, suppose a door handle or something, and we feel the sudden sensation of hot or cold. So what happens is that heat transfer occurs. Uh, the thermal equilibrium can be defined as when a hot body is placed in contact with a cold body. Heat flows from the hot body to the colder body, and this transfer of heat continues till some quantity is equal in both of them. This is an important line. What it says that till how long will heat flow continue? Heat flow doesn't, I mean, it doesn't drain all the heat from the system. So the heat flow will continue till a time when some quantity is equal in both the system. That quantity that is equal is called the temperature. And here comes the first macroscopic variable that we will study. That is when, suppose A is a body which is hot and B is a body that is cold. And if we bring them together, then heat flows from the hotter to the colder body, and then at a particular time in the heat flows stops. That means some quantity is same in both these systems, and that is why the heat flow stopped, and we'll get something of like a warm nature or something. And this gives the first notion of temperature. Is thermal equilibrium clear, Namika?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now we'll study something called the zeroth law of thermodynamics, which says that if A and B are in thermal equilibrium and B and C are in thermal equilibrium, then A and C are also in thermal equilibrium. This is a, I mean, this looks like a pretty straightforward definitions, but this is the thing that gives rise to temperature. Suppose, suppose we have two systems, A and B, and there is an adiabatic wall between them. That means no heat flows between A and B. And we have another system, C. And here it is conductive. That means heat can flow from A to C, and heat can also flow from B to C. If we keep them like this, at some point, A will be in the same temperature with C, and B will also be at the same temperature with C. Then what we do is that we make this adiabatic. This is C, sorry. This is A and this is B. And there is an adiabatic wall between them, which means that no heat transfers between A and B. And then we have another system C, and heat can flow from A to C and B to C. At some point of time, if we leave them, then A and C and B and C will be in the same temperature. That means at some point of time, no heat will flow from A to C and B to C. Now, what we do is that we have the systems A and B, and we replace this by adiabatic walls. That means no heat flows from A to C and B to C. And before there was an adiabatic wall here, and if we remove this, we'll see that no heat flows from A to B. That means A and C in equilibrium and B and C in equilibrium means that A and B are also in thermodynamic equilibrium. Is this point clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What it essentially means that property of equilibrium has the character of transitivity. Suppose I would like to give a brief example. Suppose A, B, and C are three people and they are not systems under consideration. Suppose if A and C know each other, and B and C knows each other, that doesn't mean that A and B will know each other. So knowing each other doesn't have the character of transitivity, whereas thermal equilibrium does. This is just a brief point to just understand. Now we'll study about work and heat. So before going this, I will just like to describe some parts which we have to consider in the upcoming classes. So the different types of paths. We have various types of paths in thermodynamics, and there is something called a reversible path. And in reversible path, suppose we want to go from an initial state 1 to a final state 2, and if we go from 1 to 2 in such a way that at each point the system is in equilibrium, then it is a reversible path. The reversible path happens very slowly. Then we have something called the irreversible path. Most of the physical happenings in life are irreversible in nature. This happens slowly, and it also defines the direction of time. Suppose you break something, suppose a glass or something, you cannot just unbreak it. So yeah, most of the physical phenomena are irreversible. Then we have something called the adiabatic path. That means no heat transfer occurs between the system and the surrounding. We have something called the isobaric path, which is a path at constant pressure. Then we have isothermal path, which happens at constant temperature. And also we have isochoric path, which happens at constant volume. We'll encounter this and study this in more details. But since in work, we'll study work in the next slide. So I want to give a brief taste about what all these paths are. Is everything clear till now?
Excuse me, ma'am. Actually, because of network problem, I didn't hear the first two.
Okay, just a second. These are very straightforward definitions. So suppose you consider that we have a system and which is at point 1 and you want to go to point 2. Okay. And you go in such a way that your system is always in equilibrium when it goes from 1 to 2. Suppose you want to see if it is in equilibrium now, it is at equilibrium. If you want to see at this point if it is at equilibrium, then yes, it is at equilibrium. This type of path is called reversible path. And for a system to be in a reversible path, it should happen very slowly. Is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Irreversible as the definition.
I have a question, just doubt, to clarify.
Yeah.
So reversible means also it is something like the thing should go from 2 to 1 as well, right?
Yeah. It should go from 2 to 1, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, as already mentioned by Mukesh, it doesn't say the direction of time. It's the opposite of irreversible path. Suppose you take a glass and break it. You cannot just unbreak the glass. It's an example of irreversible. That means it says the direction of time. You cannot go back in time and unbreak the glass. Whereas in reversible path, you can do that. You can go from 2 to 1. And this is the definition of irreversible path. Is it clear now, Anamika?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Now we'll describe something called work, which is like a fundamental concept in thermodynamics. We have studied different types of work in our intermediate class or in graduation itself, like work done due to gravity and all sorts of things. Mainly the definition is that work is a dot product of force and the displacement L, where this is the applied force, and this is the displacement. In thermodynamics, we talk about expansion work. So suppose we have a system. It is filled with fluid, and by applying some pressure, P external, we compress it to a new position. And so there is some amount of work needed to do this thing. This type of work will be considered here in thermodynamics. We know that pressure is equal to force by area. So force is pressure into area. So if we talk about a small amount of work, then from the previous equations, PAL or delta L, if we take a small amount of change, then area into length is P external into del V, where del V is the volume change, and P external is the pressure applied. So ultimately the definition of is P external dV. The important thing to remember here is that this fluid will have a pressure of its own, but when the pressure that appears here is the external pressure that we will apply to the system. And we do something like this, which means that it is not an exact differential. Unlike dV, which is an exact differential, differential we learn in mathematical physics class, but what it essentially means that work done depends upon the path taken. Path taken. It doesn't mean that we did a crappy experiment or we did not calculate the dW properly. It just means that work done depends upon the path taken to go from one position to another. Also, by convention, which is purely conventional, dW is defined as a minus sign is put here, which essentially means that suppose dV is V2 minus V1. If we do expansion, that is, expansion means that the later volume is greater than the initial volume, then dW is negative. So this is purely convention. That means if the work done is of expansion sort, which means that the system is doing work against the surrounding, then the work done is negative. And if V1 is greater than V2, that means compression, that is work is done on the system, then this quantity will be negative, and negative will make positive. That is compression work is positive. This is purely convention. This is this is nothing to do with physics. This is purely conventional thing. Is this point clear? Okay. Okay.
One comment I have, Dorothy.
Yeah.
When you define pressure in here, then this force should be normal force, or maybe like it should be, it should have some angle, but it's like 90 degree, right? I mean, if I say
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you study thermodynamics mainly in terms of pressure, so you don't study it mainly in terms of force. So
Yeah.
pressure doesn't have a particular direction. So
Yeah.
if we, so
it should be normal to the area, right? The
it is
area
normal
which
to
we
the
are
area.
talking.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So main thing to remember, the main thing to remember here is that the fluid will have an internal pressure of its own. So main thing to remember is that here the P that appears here is the external pressure.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll now discuss more about the path dependence of work. We already said that the work done depends upon the path. We'll look more into it now, because we want to understand it in a more better way. So for that, let us consider a reversible process in which we compress the system. So suppose I have a system and my initial coordinates are P1 and V1. And I compress it in such a way that my final state is P2 and V2. That means my V1 is greater than V2. That means I'm compressing it. And since pressure is inversely proportional to volume, that means my pressure 1 is less than P2. This is just for understanding. We are trying to understand that how work depends upon the path taken. So if we consider a PV diagram, this is the volume, this is the P. My V1 will be someone here. My V2 will be someone here. And my P2 will be someone here. And my P1 will be, let's say I'm compressing the system. That means this is my initial state. Sorry, this is P2 and this is P1. My final pressure is greater than the initial pressure. Just this. So we have a reversible path and we are compressing the system. Compressing means that my initial volume is greater than the final volume. So this is the PV diagram. Since my V1 is greater, it will be someone here, and this is here. And the P1 will be here, and my P2 will be here. So P1, this is my initial state, and this is my final state. So I want to go from this position to this position. There will be numerous paths along which we can go. We can go along this path. We can go along this path. We do not have to take a particular any of this particular. We can go along a straight path, and we can. There are numerous ways to go from 1 to T. But to show the dependence of path, let us consider two paths. So in the first path, we go from the initial state to the final state by this line. That is path 1 is where we go from V1 to V2 and we keep P1 constant. In the second part, we go from P1 to P2 and we keep V2 constant. This is my first part. So let us calculate the total work done. So W1 will be something like minus V1 to V2, that is this part, V1 to V2. We want to go from V1 to V2, and my external pressure is P1, that is this pressure, into dV, minus, we are going from V2 to V2 itself, and my pressure external is P external and dV. Here, we are integrating along dV by we are keeping the volume constant. So this term will be effectively 0. This term will be 0. And here, minus P1, V2 minus V1. Essentially, this will be P1, V1 minus V2. So my work done along the first path will be, this is P1 along this line, and V1 minus V2. So ultimately the work done is the area under this curve. This is W1. So now let us take a different path. In the second path, let us go from this path along this and this path. Let us go from the initial state to the final state along this path. That is, we take we consider this part. So the part 2 is something like we go from P1 to P2 and we keep V1 constant. And then we go from V1 to V2 and we keep P2 constant. So W2 is something of this form. We go from V1 to V1 itself and P external dV. And then V1 to V2, P2 dV. This is, we are differentiating, integrating along dV, and my volume is constant. So this term will be effectively 0. And this will be minus P2, V2 minus V1, which will be essentially V1 minus V2. So as you can see, W1 is not equal to W2. This quantity will be P2, V2 minus V1. So the area under this curve, that is P2 is here, all this work, all this area will be the work done. So what I wanted to say is that W1 is not equal to W2 when we consider work. Is this point clear, Anamika?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So essentially we established that work done depends upon the path taken. So before we said that work done is a path variable before I described it. So this work done cannot be used to describe the equilibrium state of a system since it depends upon the path. Another thing is that if we take a this was my final state where my W1 was equal to P1 V1 minus V2 and W2 is equal to P2 V1 minus V2. We derived this in the previous lecture. So in the first part, we went from this state, like this, to go from the initial state to the final state. Suppose in the second part, we went from this to this. Suppose we reverse this second part, that is, we go from the final state to the initial state. Then work done will be negative of this quantity, V1 minus V2. And if then this is called a cyclic path, that is, you started from I and you went along this path and you reached the initial path itself. Now if we consider the total work done, that is this represents a closed cycle, then we say this is not equal to 0, since if you take W1 minus W2, these two quantities are different. If it were a state variable, then this quantity would have been 0. Suppose if we take temperature or some other quantities. So what I essentially mean is that since it is a path variable going along a complete cycle, if you reach the same position, this quantity is not essentially 0. So yeah, this is where I would like to finish for today's class. Is everything clear, Anamika? Or if you'd like to ask something?
Clear, ma'am.
Okay, okay. In the next class, we'll study about heat and the first law of thermodynamics. So yeah, I hope to see you in the next class.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.